Okay, welcome back to the Tuesday weekend. We are talking about menus. And
News.
in fact, let's talk for just a moment about a physical menu versus a QR code because, well, most people
Yeah.
share the same opinion of QR codes.
Very much so.
Yes, they do.
And
Absolutely.
now, sure, I will say everyone here right now among us is a member somewhere of Gen X, I believe.
Yeah.
And all right, like
Just
maybe we're
barely,
just
but yeah.
showing our generational attitude. Yeah, just let's all step away from the QR codes. I mean, it's cool.
Honestly, I don't care.
Yeah.
They can hand me a solid menu. I mean, they can, hey, it's on this QR code. And I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. It's on the QR code. Everyone spends a million hours a week on their phones anyway. Like, oh, I have to use this. And it's like you were staring at your phone for 10 minutes and now you're pissed you have to use your phone. Really?
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, I see
feel
that so many times.
But I
Sure.
I like that physical thing because we stare at our phones all week long, all day long, that one of my partner's biggest complaints is that we're just not present with each other anymore because we're on our phones. And so having that, like, oh, well, what do you think of this one? And that like interaction with a
Yeah.
physical object that is not a digital screen does kind of feel nice. There's something, I don't know, maybe it's retro, but I like the retro.
Yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate on here because
No,
as
I mean,
well,
I
a lot
feel
of
both
menus that came out in easily the last decade. Every restaurant in the country decided to go to that nice cream colored paper and have like a little prettier font that's not so much black as it might be brown or might even be reddish that you can barely read.
Right.
Like, especially older people would come in and be like, they need a light. They need to use their phone. I'm just looking at the menu going, I know you can't read it. I can barely see it. I get it.
That is a common issue in especially fancier dinner restaurants that like to have the lighting level lower.
Yep.
Is you then need to make your font bigger and more
Well,
legible.
and not only is it lower lighting, but it's that old retro style lighting you see with like the fibers you can really see in the clear light bulbs that are like the yellowish, and they really wash out all the colors on the base color they chose, which is in the almost same spectrum as the light they're using for you to read, which doesn't work at all. I mean, and I've seen it in most every place I've worked. Like, we've got new menus, and I'm like, why does everyone who does a new menu think they're Patrick Bateman and they need a better card? Just give them something they can read and like get the food list off of, not something this is a gorgeous menu. I have no idea what's on it because half of the stuff is washed out by the lighting alone.
Yep. And font choice too. Like not just the color of the print, but like you've got to be able to see it, read it. It's like that little 10-point font underneath to describe it. And yeah, Gen X, my eyesight is not what it used to be, but it's still 2020, and I have trouble reading menus in restaurants.
It's the same. It's like I said, larger font, thicker font, make it easier for people to read. And I think the menus would make a nice comeback. There's places here that there's a place down the street, Ironside. They do their lunch menu. Happy hour starts at 3. Their lunch menu goes away. Their dinner menu goes away. They have paper happy hour menus out for that. When happy hour is over, they bring back their dinner menus that are also paper. I mean, they went away from the QR code. Other places in the same restaurant group use the QR code instead of heavy menus. But they've all made a big change, I'd say, in the last 6 months or so, to have that physical menu for people where they can just put it, here's our menu, take a look. And I'm seeing, at least out here in the industry with the QR codes, they're still there, but a lot of places have brought back their physical menus, obviously, because people like them better. I mean, like you said, I like them better, but if someone said, hey, it's on a QR code, I'm not going to be like, oh no, this place sucks. I'm like, yeah, all right.
I guess I should actually be a little more specific with my main issue with QR codes. And that is a QR scan that brings you to a bad PDF of a menu.
Oh,
that, like barely legible, or one that if you try to make it bigger on your phone, just won't. That's something to be avoided.
There's a price level there, and I mean, a lot of places did the cheap and dirty one right after COVID, especially out here where you couldn't have physical menus for about 6 months. So everyone was using those and sort of got used to them. But it was, we have a lot of tourists and a lot of people who aren't from here who are like, what's this thing?
Mhm.
And it's like, well, you just can't take a picture of it with your phone, and your menu will be on your phone. And like, well, I want a menu, and I'm like, we legally can't have them right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Come back in 2022.
Yeah.
No.
Honestly, though, I wish we had QR codes at the hotel in the rooms, because I do not have a dinner menu. I do not have a happy hour menu in any room in that hotel.
Mhm.
And I'm like, we have 295 rooms. And they're like, well, it's a little slow. And I'm like, no one knows what we have. Like, I get people who call me during our dinner rush. Hey, can you tell me what's on your menu? And I'm like, no,
Sure.
I don't have time right now. But if you'd like to come down to the bar, I will go over the menu with you. I'm just very, very busy right now. I'm very sorry. I currently have a full bar and another 4 tables that I'm dealing with. I don't have time to read the menu and go over the nuances of all the dishes with you right now.
Mhm.
I can do it if you come down here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the QR code thing, I don't care. As long as people can read it and get the menu. I mean, I think most places ought to just keep both. Here's your menu. Don't like how the menu looks. There's a QR code in the corner of the paper menu. So it's like, I can't read this that well. Oh, there it is. And I can go through and see it.
Okay, that makes
Personally,
sense.
that's how I do it.
I could live in that world.
Yeah, I think I could live in that world as well.
I really think that'd be the easiest way to get rid of the annoyance of the QR code for a lot of the older people, and where the younger people are just like, oh, I just QR code, and they'll just roll through it.
So one other thing about the physical menu or the QR menu, either way, the virtual menu, is, does a menu listing need to contain every ingredient in that drink or on that plate? Because people don't read to begin with. And so when presented with a big block of text among other big blocks of text, they will just skip over it and then act surprised when there's pickled red onion on their burger.
Yeah. And at the same time, you've got to have that on there so that when they do read it and say, hey, I can't eat this, I'm allergic to this. And it's like, it's right there.
It's right there.
Honestly, that's the reason why you have all those ingredients. Drinks are a little different because you might get 8 or 9 ingredients in a drink, like say a tiki style drink, like a Mai Tai or something like that. But most drinks are going to be 4 or 5 ingredients,
Sure.
and you can see what they are. And if you know what those ingredients are, they will let you know what the flavor is going to be like when that cocktail comes out.
Right.
The food thing, though, again, I believe if it's on the menu, you are now like, hey, I didn't know this was on it. It's like, well, it's listed on the, I've brought menus out. I'm like, here's the menu. And I'm like, the very first ingredient is this thing that you say you can't eat. It's the very first word after what that food says.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, and I'm like, I can get you a new one, man, but you got to pay for it. It's because also a lot of people coming out of COVID, especially, are really trying to pull the whole old school Utah thing where it's like, let's see how much free stuff we can get from the restaurant by complaining.
Yeah. There's a lot.
I was getting battered on that when I was working at the seafood place, just crushed. It's like, well, this wasn't cooked properly. I'm like, it says on the menu, we cook this medium rare to medium. If you want it cooked well done. And I even asked him, I said, how do you want that cooked? We cook medium rare to medium. He said, that's fine. Now you're saying it's undercooked and you like your fish well done. That's something you say when I bring it out to begin, not when you've eaten the entire fish and there's a piece of parsley on the plate 2 hours later. But yeah, I agree, everything should be on there.
Or if you take 2 bites into it and then flag me over and say, could you cook this a little bit more? Sure.
No problem.
Well, no problem.
Absolutely.
We'll take care of that.
It's same thing with drinks. When someone's like, I don't like this drink. And I'm like, what don't you like about it? I'm not trying to be condescending. I want to know what you don't like about it so I can fix it.
I think that's
the generic, I don't like it. Okay, why? I'm like, I just don't. Can't do nothing for you.
So often that is the reason we want to know, as like the server, as the restaurant manager or the bartender or the chef, is like, what don't you like about it? Because I've tried to give you all the information on the menu. I've talked you through it half the time, and you come back and be like, well, this is gross. That doesn't help me. That doesn't help me get you what you want. Yeah, and also that doesn't help me make sure that the other patrons are getting something delicious. It's like, is it bad? Did it go sour? Did it like get made improperly? Or is it just not your palate? And that's okay, but we can't tell you what your palate is.
We would all love to deal with that in the moment versus 2 days later on a Yelp review.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they didn't like this. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I talked to them about an hour about it. Or I didn't like it at all. And they'll drop it. They'll usually drop that little phrase at the end. It's like, well, I didn't really like the fish. And you're like, okay, great.
Or
you ate it.
The much worse habit of the server comes by, how is everything? Oh, great. And then leaving a bad Yelp review.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Don't do that. People just
I've had that before. We're like, this is fantastic. Food is great. The Yelp review the very next day is this was bad. This was bad. Our servers seem indifferent. You're just like, those are usually the professional Yelpers who like to sit down with the Yelp page open on their phone oh, thank you for the menu. And they like nudge the phone looking at you like, see, look. And you're like, yeah, that's when I turn into Bad Nick server. It's just like, all right.
Still, to me, that is the 2020s version of I know the owner. It's like, oh, look, I'm important for a completely nonsense reason.
I got that at the hotel last weekend. I know the owner. You know the Marriott's?
Yeah, really? And you're talking to me?
I'm like, because I actually do know some of them from Utah. I went to high school with them.
Oh,
Yeah, I know, right? But yeah, I really think, to our basic point, I think a menu should have all the ingredients on it, especially with the emergence of a whole bunch of food allergies that are solely based on how badly we are growing and raising our food versus what they were 30 years ago. I felt the same, like, okay, everyone's got a gluten allergy, and then you go in and see how they actually do wheat for flour, and I'm like, well, yeah, you're allergic to the chemicals that are in the damn flour.
There are not very many conspiracies that I'm going to throw out there on this channel, but I have a belief. I'm willing to be proven wrong, but maybe it's not that suddenly everyone's celiac and have gluten allergies. Maybe it's what we're spraying onto the wheat that everyone's having a reaction to. Because, hey, you know what? Maybe if it's strong enough to kill all the insects, that maybe your digestive system doesn't naturally want to take that in itself.
I mean, even if you did actually, take that and completely clean it out with bleach and stuff to get rid of all of the chemicals in it, and then re-add the dietary supplements that would make it back into flour again. I can't imagine why that would not affect a majority of people who have never eaten any of that stuff ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to spend a little extra on bread that just uses flour, not enriched flour, and uses actually sugar instead of corn syrup. To me, that's worth an extra $1 or $2 a loaf, just so that I can eat that and enjoy it and don't have to go like, oh, why is it suddenly my mouth hurt, or why is my stomach upset after a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Like, I honestly, I truly feel bad for people, like, when they're like, I have a gluten thing, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I got it. That sucks. Don't worry about it. And if I could say this out loud to everyone out there, if you have any foodborne illness whatsoever, that's the second thing out of your mouth after the server or bartender says, hey, how you doing today? I'm doing great. By the way, I have this allergy.
Mm-hmm.
I love when people do that.
Right at the top. If you let me know at the beginning, it's great. If I come out and you get something and you realize, oh, I could die because I'm allergic to arugula. Yeah, let me know beforehand, before I have to go and go to the case of EpiPens and just, there you go. Go to a hospital.
On that note, if you tell me you have an onion allergy, that means I can't use the stock that I made.
Right.
If you just don't like onions, but you still tell me you have the allergy and I can't use that stock, there's no way on the plate of food with the stock being incorporated into a sauce and other flavors going on, that you're going to be able to pull the flavor of onion out from all the rest of that. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. So you are just stopping me from being able to actually make the plate as it should be because you have a preference.
Yeah. And I don't mind preferences.
I don't mind preferences. Just don't lie to me and tell me you have an allergy.
Well, and I think it's really important, to know that when you tell somebody you have an allergy to something that you don't, that makes the kitchen go into a whole COVID-like procedure to make sure that we're going to not kill you. If it's just that you don't like it, say, can you take it out?
Yeah.
Right. We're going to take care of you for that. But what you do is cheapen the allergies of the other people that really do have that allergy. They do need that special care of, for us, it's a freshly washed scoop out of a fresh bucket of ice cream to make sure that we don't have that peanut contamination or that wheat contamination.
Yeah, but that cross contamination is huge.
Right?
Yeah,
and it's so easy to miss.
And a lot of kitchens will have fully separate cutting boards and knives and the like for specific allergens. So we do on our end try our best, but we get a lot thrown at us.
Yeah. And also when someone's like, oh, I'm allergic to onions, you're immediately, and garlic? Not that.
Is that like, the whole allium family?
I'm like, are you, because honestly, anyone I've had who said they have an onion allergy, they've always said, I'm allergic to onions and garlic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never had anyone just say the one, because I've asked, and garlic, like, oh yeah, anything like onions at all. I'm like, okay, got it.
I'm just going to take a moment and be grateful that an onion and garlic allergy is not one of the problems I have to deal with in my life.
Yeah.
But okay, any final thoughts on menus?
Now I'm hungry.
I'm always
Yeah.
hungry after the show. Honestly, menus, building them is a pain in the ass, but it's honestly usually at the end of the day well worth it. I just wish that all of us would put them on better paper with better fonts.
And if they're laminated, wipe them off every once in a while.
Like every single time.
Like after every table.
Every single time. Yeah.
That'd be great.
And when you have the paper ones, toss them.
Yep.
That's why you have the paper ones. They're paper. They've had their hands all over them. You can't clean it. Throw them away. If you don't like the QR codes, tough.
Yeah, it is the way of the future. It's going to have to be adopted anyway. All right, I do want to finish on a positive note. So I've got a restaurant shout out that I want to make, even though it's not really a restaurant, it's a farmer's market that sells food. But I want to shout out the Maine Beer Shed in Kingfield, Maine. Go in, say hi to Kate and Brian, the owners. Tell them I sent you. Go buy lots of beer. They feature as many Maine-sourced beers and products as they can. So last week I started at the top left of the map. Now I'm going to the top right. But yeah, go if you're heading up to Sugarloaf, if you're hiking the AT and you get up to that area, it's only about 10 miles down the road. Pop over to Kingfield, pop into the Maine Beer Shed. You'll have a good time there.
Awesome.
I'd give a shout out to Herm's in Logan, Utah. One of the best breakfast places I've ever been ever. Actually has a great chef. It's in it's a house. It's a great big house that's surrounded by other houses that people live in, but the food there is fantastic. Anytime I've been in that town, I've never missed that place ever. I'm not a breakfast person. The food there is just fantastic. I mean, I took it upon myself to just eat through the entire menu.
There are some restaurants where that is really your best option, is you start at the top and just kind of
keep trying everything else. Yeah.
Like, that sounds good. I'll have that next time.
Awesome. And I'd give a shout out to Lucille's Creole Cafe in Boulder, Colorado. They do an amazing brunch, an amazing cup of chicory coffee, if that's your thing. Which, it is probably worthwhile with what's happening with coffee in about 30, 40, maybe less years. And great, great service in a funky little house, just like the one you mentioned, Nick, and definitely a worthwhile spot to go to if you're in that area.
I've been. That place is fantastic.
Hey, yeah. You're a great spot.
All right. A place for me to go next time I'm in Colorado. All right. And with that, just to remind everyone, like, subscribe, tell all your friends, leave a comment below about your thoughts on making menus, some of your experiences. Let us know what we got wrong. Tell us how we can expand this subject into the future, because there's plenty to talk about. I feel like we basically just scratched the surface on some of these topics, even though we've just spent an hour talking about them. Yeah. So thank you for joining us. We will be back next week, and everyone have a good week.
You too.
See you later.